After Bai Yueguang passed away, Oliver hated me for a full 10 years. I tried to cautiously approach him, but he responded with a cold laugh. You want me to forgive you, unless you leave this world. However, when the house caught fire, when the ceiling collapsed, he didn't hesitate to push me away. He fell into a pool of blood. His life was in danger. In his final moments, he gently pushed me away as I tried to touch his hand. Emily, if I had never met you in this lifetime, how wonderful that would be at the funeral. Oliver's mother was heartbroken. She cried bitterly. She said with regret, "Oh, Oliver, I'm sorry, my son. I shouldn't have forced you to marry." Oliver's father had red eyes. He stared at me closely and said, "If you had married Sophia back then, you would surely be living well now. Oliver saved you 3 times. Why is it always you who puts him in trouble? Why isn't it you who gets into trouble? Everyone regrets letting Oliver marry me, including myself. In the end, I stood at the highest revolving restaurant in the city center. I jumped off. I returned to 10 years ago. This time, I decided to let go, to completely sever everything between Oliver and me, to fulfill everyone. Emily, you really are something. My parents actually tried to force me by cutting off relations. They insisted that I marry you. You think marrying me will make you happy?" I groggily opened my eyes. The deep and indifferent voice still echoed in my ears. I stared blankly at Oliver in front of me. He was wearing a well-fitted suit. His eyes and brow revealed a casual demeanor, completely different from him 10 years later. This is Oliver at 20. I've really gone back to 10 years ago. It feels like my heart is being pricked by needles, but I still keep my eyes fixed on him. I want to deeply remember who he is now. You don't want to marry me. It's because the one you truly want to marry is Sophia, right? Oliver smirked coldly. So what if that's the case? Can you let go? I answered seriously. I can. Because of the will left by my family, marrying me means inheriting a fortune of billions. His parents forced him to marry me to save their company. They pressured him into it. He was taken aback for a moment. Then he smiled helplessly. You're using your family background to pressure me. My parents are also forcing me to marry you. Our marriage has already been decided. Now you say to let go. How can I let go? He spoke casually, with a hint of disdain. Emily, I don't have time to play this cat-and-mouse game with you. After saying that, he turned and walked to the other side. He no longer pays attention to me. The disdain in his eyes was like a knife. It pierced my heart, causing pain, whether in this life or the previous one. I have always loved Oliver deeply. He rescued me twice, disregarding danger. I thought he secretly liked me too, even knowing that Oliver's parents had other plans. I still happily married him. It wasn't until his beloved passed away that I suddenly realized. It turned out he had always had someone else in his heart. I devoted 10 years of deep affection, but it became his 10 years of suffering in the previous life. I did good deeds at all costs, even exchanging my own life for it, just to ensure Oliver could be reborn. Before my rebirth, a wise man once gave me some insights. The wise man reminded me, in the 12 hours of your rebirth, you must help him complete 3 regrettable things, then leave immediately. After that, you all just go your separate ways. There will be no more intersections. He won't die early because of you. You all will be able to live your own lives in the future. However, rebirth comes at a cost. You need to think it through carefully. All I care about is that Oliver survives. I don't care what price I have to pay. I later went to see the lawyer handling my parents' estate. Even if Oliver doesn't marry me, but chooses to marry Sophia instead, he can still inherit my family's fortune. I know Oliver has 3 regrets. All of these are written in his diary. I opened that familiar diary. On the title page are his strong, elegant characters. First, he regrets being bound by the mundane and marrying her. Second, he regrets being indecisive at that time, not being able to escape his parents' arrangements. Third, he laments the unfairness of fate. In the end, he couldn't protect her well. Now, his first regret has finally been resolved. I walked out holding the valid documents prepared by the lawyer. I handed them to Oliver. He glanced at me. That look was as if he saw me as someone trying every means to force him to submit. He reached out to take the documents. I gently pressed his hand down. Smiling, I said, "Let's take a look tomorrow. There will be surprises." Oliver glanced at me. He said, "That's really boring." I still wouldn't let him see. I said, "Don't be in a hurry. It's just one more day." He teased with a smile. "You seem a bit strange today. Are you thinking about marrying me? Are you so happy that you're a bit dazed?" "I'm really very happy because I finally saw you alive again." My lips slightly curled up. My eyes sparkled with light. In my eyes, you are the brightest person in the world. Being with you is the greatest luck of my life. Let's go back. He let out a hum, turned, and left. If it weren't for the fact that I know he doesn't mean that to me, I almost thought he was shy. The car drove back to the villa, passing through the bustling commercial street. I rolled down the car window. I heard many girls chatting. There's a meteor shower tonight. From the rooftop, you can see a once-in-a-century sight. I heard that couples who watch the meteor shower together will love and stay together and never be separated in my past life. At this time, I also heard about the meteor shower. I was particularly excited at that time. I kept asking Oliver to take me to the rooftop to see it. Back then, Oliver had a hint of indifference and sarcasm on his face. He said, "You've already been tied to me for a lifetime. You still want to be tied to me for eternity? Those nonsense about the meteor shower only deceive little girls. If you believe it, that's fine. Don't drag me into it." That gaze, cold as an ice pick, it sent a shiver down my spine, even across the distant past. It still made me feel cold all over. I quietly rolled down the car window. This time, Oliver said calmly, "Do you want to go? I can accompany you to the rooftop tonight. Consider it compensation. After all, I might not have time to accompany you back to pay respects to your parents after we get married." I looked up at him suddenly. Although surprised, it also felt quite normal. Oliver has always been like this. His words can be harsh, but his heart is kinder than anyone else's. He clearly has no feelings for me, yet he has risked his life 3 times to protect me. The first time, I encountered a robber. He got a knife wound on his right arm while trying to protect me. His right arm was slashed. Since then, his hands, which used to play the piano, are not as agile as before. The second time, I contracted a virus. My life is in danger. He drove hundreds of kilometers overnight to find a retired old Chinese medicine doctor to save me. As a result, he got into a car accident on the way. Almost had to amputate. This is the 3rd time. The building is on fire. He saved me. He sacrificed himself in front of me. Oliver is great at everything, just doesn't love me. I understand in my heart. After today, my relationship with Oliver will be completely over, even if we really climb to the rooftop and witness that once-in-a-century meteor shower. We still can't be together, staying together forever. That's just a daydream. I hold back my tears and smile at him happily. All right, then let's go watch the meteor shower together. Someone rushed to stop my car. Only after asking did I find out. It's Sophia's assistant. She told me. Sophia has a terrible headache. I want to see Oliver. Oliver frowned. "Quickly get out of the car," he said. "Sophia feels a bit unwell. I need to take care of her. You should go home first. We'll meet in the Sky Garden tonight." I nodded. "Say it, okay?" He looked a bit surprised. "Weren't you always indifferent about me seeing her? Why is it different now?" I was just about to explain, but he coldly smiled. "That's true. We're about to get engaged. She is no longer important to you." After he finished speaking, he got out of the car. He didn't even notice the disappointment and helplessness in my eyes. Actually, I never stopped him from favoring Sophia, but there was one time. I mentioned something to my uncle and aunt. I said there was a bit of an issue between Sophia and the company executives. Later, upon investigation, she indeed had a problem. I tried hard to stop Oliver. I don't want him to get too close to Sophia, but he completely misunderstands my intentions. Later, Sophia passed away. He actually fell into a deep depression for a whole decade. If I had to choose, I would rather see him with Sophia than to see him suffer for my sake, ultimately dying for me. I first went to the immigration office to complete the exit procedures. Then I returned to Oliver's house. Auntie personally cooked. She made a big spread of my favorite dishes. I took off my white cashmere coat and draped it over Auntie. I said, "It's so cold, you need to keep warm." Auntie looked at me with a smile, so happy that she couldn't close her mouth. "Emily is really thoughtful. Let me see your engagement agreement with Oliver. I've waited so long for this day. Finally, I get to hear you call me Mom." Uncle saw that I was alone behind me. He was so angry that he stomped his feet. "That kid didn't come back with you again. You both have already signed the engagement agreement. How could he still be so careless about taking care of you? Wait for him to come back. I have to have a serious talk with him." Uncle and Aunt's genuine concern for me, it makes me feel a bit sad. Since my parents passed away, I became an orphan. They raised me. They gave me love and everything. I have always been obedient, but this time, I have to go against their wishes. I looked at them and said seriously, "Uncle, Aunt, I have decided not to get engaged to Oliver. Tomorrow I will go to M country. In the future, I may not be able to take care of you. You must take care of yourselves." Aunt was stunned. Her eyes suddenly turned red. "You child. You grew up with us since you were little. The Oliver family is your family. Now you say you want to leave. Where are you going? Did Oliver make you feel wronged because of that woman with the surname Liu? So you don't want to get engaged to him anymore?" Auntie asked me anxiously. "If he didn't care about you, how could he protect you with all his might twice? Don't be foolish. Every year on your birthday, he always prepares various gifts in advance. I know you like Oliver. You learn to cook for him and give him massages every day to relieve his hand pain. If you two get engaged, you will definitely be very happy," Auntie said with a choked voice. "That person with the surname Liu has a bad character. We can't let her take advantage of this. Please don't run away impulsively. They advised me like this before too. In the end, I lost the person I loved the most. They also lost their only son forever. This regret will accompany each of us for a lifetime." I gently wiped the tears from Auntie's eyes, whispered comforting words to her. "Aunt, please don't advise me. Emotional matters can't be forced. Brother Oliver already has someone in his heart. I can't force him to marry me. I had a dream last night. I dreamed that we got married. But he was unwilling to see me. He's been buried in work all day. He exhausts himself to the point of injury. The porridge I made with care. He wouldn't drink a single drop. He is sick, and he won't let me get close. He says he feels awful whenever I get near. In the end, he died at 30 to save me. Speaking of which, my heart aches to the point of breathlessness." Aunt was momentarily stunned. She said, but it was just a dream. Emily, Oliver wouldn't do that." I rubbed my nose. I tried to smile. "Uncle, Auntie, about those things in my dreams. It's as if the heavens had told me in advance. I'm not expecting anything else. I just hope he can live a stable life. As for whether to get married or not, actually, it's not that important. Moreover, even though he holds a high position, many things are beyond his control, at least for marriage. I think he should decide for himself." I knelt down and bowed my head 3 times with force. "All the immigration procedures have been completed. Uncle and Auntie, please agree to my request. You raised me. I can never repay this kindness in my lifetime. In my next life, I will work like an ox or horse to repay you." Uncle pursed his lips. He helped me up. Auntie wiped her tears. She took out a stack of money and stuffed it into my hands. Uncle pursed his lips. He fell silent for a moment. Finally, he nodded and said, "Forget it. Since you've made your decision, I won't say much more, but you must remember, the door to the Oliver family will always be open for you, no matter when." My tears flowed down in an instant. I tightly hugged my aunt. "Speak. Thank you, Aunt. As long as I completely cut ties with Oliver, the troubles from the previous life won't happen again. He can live well. Uncle and Aunt won't be sad for losing their child. They won't resent me either. This lifetime, everyone will have a good ending. The second regret in Oliver's diary has been resolved. Time is tight now. I must fulfill his remaining 3 wishes within 12 hours. Now there's only one left, whether I can complete it smoothly. I really have no confidence in my heart. In the evening, I went to the Sky Garden. There were couples everywhere. They are all praying for a lasting bond. I saw Emily. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice. My heart leaped with joy. I turned around immediately, but in front of me was only Oliver. His face looked terrible. He suddenly grabbed my wrist. His eyes were red with anger. "You clearly know I despise those who bully others just because they have power. Is it just because I didn't accompany you home? Yet you slandered me in front of my parents. You made them say many hurtful things about Sophia. She is feeling down now. She even has thoughts of ending her life. Do you think this is okay?" My wrist was tightly gripped by him. The pain made my face turn pale. In my previous life, after I married Oliver, Sophia, unable to cope, committed suicide a month later by overdosing. Oliver couldn't find a suitable blood type to give her a transfusion. In the end, he could only helplessly watch her leave. He hates me to the bone because of this. He never forgave me until his death. But in this life, I did not marry him. How could Sophia choose to commit suicide? I was worried about how to fulfill his last wish. I didn't expect the opportunity to come knocking. I stared at him and asked, "So you are here to draw my blood to save her?" Oliver was stunned. He seemed not to expect me to be so direct. His tone was as cold as ice. "You think I wouldn't dare? You made Sophia suffer. In the end, she committed suicide. You should be responsible for that." He took me to where Sophia lived. Sophia lay weakly on the bed. The doctor took out the blood-drawing equipment. He began to insert the needle into my arm. I felt a slight pain. I couldn't help but let out a hum. Oliver saw my reaction. He turned his head away. He walked over to Sophia to check on her condition. The blood type test results are coming out soon, the doctor said happily. This young lady's blood type is a perfect match, but he was somewhat worried. However, this blood transfusion requires a substantial amount of blood. I'm not sure if her body can handle it. No. Oliver's expression suddenly turned grim. His brow furrowed tightly. He said, "Her body is already weak. Taking too much blood will severely deplete her vitality. She simply can't withstand it. You are a private hospital. Can't you transfer blood from other hospitals?" The doctor said with difficulty. There was a chain car accident today. Several hospitals have received the injured. Now the blood bank is running low on supplies. If Mr. Oliver does not agree to the blood draw, then we need to be prepared. He paused for a moment, then continued. The young lady who is donating blood will not be in any danger, but the patient who is poisoned, she definitely won't survive. Oliver pursed his lips. His eyes were fixed on Sophia. I could tell he was very sad. Just tell the doctor I'm willing to save her. You can draw my blood. The doctor looked at Oliver and said, "But this will cause significant harm to your body." I said with a smile, "It's fine. A little rest will be enough. Saving lives is the priority." Oliver stared at me intently, frowning. He tore a piece of cloth from his clothes and covered my eyes. Before he left, he said, "This time, consider it a debt I owe you. I will definitely repay you this favor in the future." After he left, the doctor came over to draw my blood. The needle slowly pierced my skin. Each time it went deeper, the pain became more pronounced. I suddenly remembered things from the past with Oliver. When I was 8 years old, both of my parents had passed away. Some rich kids bully me. They laugh at me for not having parents. No one protects me. Oliver helped me drive them away. He gently patted my head. He said, "Don't worry, I will protect you." He truly kept his word. Until the very last moment of his life, he was always protecting me. I couldn't suppress my feelings for him, but I know, now that I've been reborn, I must do my utmost to sever all ties with him. When a bag of blood is drawn, I feel dizzy. Cold sweat breaks out. I feel like I'm about to faint at any moment. Vaguely, I remembered the last words he said in his past life. "Emily, if I had never met you in this life, how wonderful it would be." My tears suddenly burst forth. I forced a smile. I said, "Brother Oliver, this life, I have let you go." When I woke up, it was already bright outside. I found myself lying in the next room. It felt like an invisible hand was tightly gripping my heart. The pain was so intense that I could barely breathe. No one was around. I didn't even have the strength to move a finger. I looked out the window. I noticed it was almost noon. I should leave now. Outside, I could hear the girls chatting excitedly. There was a once-in-a-century meteor shower last night. Did you see it? Last night's meteor shower. It was so breathtaking. Another voice excitedly chimed in. It was so beautiful. I heard that couples who watch it together will be happy for a lifetime. The girls' noisy voices slowly faded away, but their satisfied tones still echoed in my ears. I felt a bit uncomfortable inside. The rare meteor shower last night, in the end, I still missed it. After a while, Oliver entered the room holding a bowl of food. That was my favorite Jiangnan pastry, peach blossom crisp. When I was a child, I felt a bit dazed for a moment. I didn't expect he still remembered. Oliver looked at me. His tone carried a long-lost tenderness. "Does it still hurt? Should I call a doctor to take a look?" "She's fine now. Thanks to you." I nodded. "Go on." "Okay." He noticed my pale complexion. His brows were tightly furrowed. He hadn't relaxed them at all. His tone softened slightly, but it remained firm. I was a bit harsh with my words yesterday. "Please don't take it to heart, but Sophia is innocent. This is between us. Don't involve her anymore in the future, and don't come to me with complaints anymore." After hearing his words, I felt a mix of emotions inside. The sourness is unbearable, but I'm not like I used to be. I cried as I explained to him. I just smiled. "Speak." Don't worry, it won't happen again." Oliver helped me tidy up the blanket. "Speak." "I couldn't accompany you to see the meteor shower last night. After we get married, I will accompany you back to your family home. I remember you really like Tibet. After returning from your family home, we can go together." I was taken aback for a moment. I said with a smile, "No need. You don't need to think too much about last night. I voluntarily saved Miss Sophia. You don't need to compensate me." I looked up at him. I tried to keep my tone calm. Oliver was clearly taken aback. There seemed to be complex emotions swirling in his eyes. "The itinerary has already been set. We will set off in 5 days. Wait until your health recovers somewhat, then we will depart." I silently looked at Oliver and said nothing more. He was holding a bowl in his hand. His hands are shaking quite badly. He was seriously injured in his hands before. It hurts every time it rains. Just like now, just holding the plate. It all seems very difficult. I feel a pang of sadness in my heart. I couldn't help but ask him to save me. "You have developed a lot of problems. You regret it." Oliver's gaze is calm. His tone is indifferent. "There's nothing to regret about this. No matter who it was at that time, I would have helped. My gaze is dim. My voice has become softer. That time when I was sick, you drove hundreds of kilometers to see me. If it were someone else, would you do the same?" He really didn't think it was anything special, but I couldn't help but let the tears flow. Yet I still tried to smile. I said to Brother Oliver, "Thank you for saving me every time." Then I whispered, "It's my fault. I've been longing for a home too much. That's why I've put you in such a difficult position. I've forced you to marry me. Did it make you uncomfortable? From now on, he will no longer have to sacrifice himself for me, and he won't have to force himself to marry me. In this life, he won't be burdened by me for another 10 years, nor will he lose his life because of me. He will live a safe and smooth life." Oliver opened his mouth. It seemed like he wanted to explain something. His face showed an unusual hint of panic. Just then, the nurse hurriedly pushed the door open. She broke the delicate atmosphere between us. She looked very anxious. Her voice trembled a bit. "Mr. Oliver, the young lady has woken up. She insists on seeing you. She won't even eat. You should go and see her quickly." Oliver's brow relaxed. His face showed obvious joy. He stood up. He said to me, "Wait for me to come back, Brother Oliver." I called out to him. His smile was brighter than the sunshine outside the window. It was about the past. "I'm sorry in the future. I wish you all the best. May you live a long life." Oliver was stunned. A sudden wave of panic surged in his heart. Why suddenly bring this up? He clearly showed a look of anxiety on his face. His voice also rose. "I'll go check on Sophia first. I'll be back soon. You should eat something first. Wait for me a moment. I have something to tell you." After he finished speaking, he turned and walked away. Seeing that time was tight, I quickly climbed out of bed. The doctor came to see me. He also prescribed medication. I smiled and said to him, "I will definitely take my medicine on time." "Thank you. Please help me tell Oliver I'm going on a trip. Make sure he takes care of himself. Don't worry about me." Oliver visited Sophia. He hurried to the hospital room. When he got there, he found no one in the room. He immediately called someone to ask, "What about Emily? She hasn't recovered yet. Where did she go?" The servant didn't have time to answer. The bodyguard rushed over. He said to Mr. Oliver, "It's not good. They encountered robbers on the way to the airport. The injured citizen is still alive. But Miss Emily just lost a lot of blood. She has lost too much blood. She has already passed away." Oliver was shocked, but he quickly calmed down. He frowned. "It's just a coincidence with the name. Our engagement banquet is in 5 days. She cannot go to Tibet right now." The doctor walked in. "Tell Mr. Oliver, Mr. Oliver, Miss Emily asked me to pass on a message before she left." The doctor told her, "Oliver has gone far away. I hope she won't worry anymore. Each of us should live our own lives well." These words struck like a thunderclap, causing Oliver's heart to tremble. The usually composed Oliver was now somewhat unsteady. He finally understood what Emily meant by getting what you wish for. Long life turned out to be the final farewell. Oliver's eyes slightly reddened. His lips trembled. He held back his emotions and said, "This is impossible. The Emily he fought desperately to save. How could she just disappear like this?" The bodyguard said gravely. The messenger saw with his own eyes. Miss Emily's car was indeed heading towards the airport. In addition, they discovered a female corpse. Her physique was very similar to Miss Emily's. The identification information also matched. So many coincidences have come together. Oliver's face is pale. His voice is calm, but his slightly trembling body reveals his inner unease. "Go get my car." He hasn't touched the steering wheel since his hand was injured. He just says he doesn't like driving anymore. In fact, he is worried that he can no longer drive as fast as he used to. He is even more afraid that his hands can't grip the steering wheel steadily. But now, he just wants to speed up, accelerate again. Oliver drove to the scene of the incident. He found the place where the body was laid. The body was covered with a white cloth. The people around are discussing. Everyone is outraged by the robbers' cruel actions. They feel even more sympathy for the innocent girl. Oliver leans against the car. He barely stands firm, using almost all his strength. It took almost all my strength just to stand firm. Emily revolves around him every day, like a clingy Band-Aid. He can't be shaken off. He didn't even realize her determination. What a dull reaction. Oliver got out of the car. He slowly walked towards the body. Every step felt like dragging a lead weight. It was so heavy that he could hardly breathe, as if he might fall into a bottomless pit at any moment. Cold sweat was pouring down his forehead. He thought to himself, if the white cloth really covers Emily, then he wouldn't be able to live either. He had saved her so many times. This time, he would definitely pull her back from danger. His fingers brushed against the cold white cloth. He suddenly stopped, as if frozen in place. After a long while, he suddenly lifted the white cloth under the white cloth. A face he didn't recognize was revealed. Oliver's tense nerves relaxed all at once. He sat down on the ground and burst out laughing. It turned out to be just a false alarm. This feeling is truly wonderful, as he laughed and laughed. Suddenly, his nose felt a bit sour. Tears flowed down uncontrollably. It turned out that his care for Emily had long since run deep, much deeper than he had imagined. Oliver returned to the villa. He prepared to bring the doctor and medicine. He also needed to choose the most comfortable car. Emily had just undergone a blood draw. She definitely couldn't withstand any more stress. He planned to get everything ready first, then go after her. But right in the villa's hall, he was surrounded by a group of bodyguards. Oliver's father's face was grim. He suddenly slapped Oliver hard. Ridiculous. You actually drew Emily's blood for that mysterious woman outside. She is so weak. How could you bear to do this? Don't you know? It was that Sophia who got too close to the company executives first. If you still have a conscience, go and bring Emily back immediately. Go and bring Emily back immediately. Marry her. Oliver was determined to find Emily, but he was stopped by his father and forced to stay. A hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. It felt as if something was tightly choking his throat. If it weren't for Emily speaking ill of me in front of you all acted to avenge her, forcing Sophia to resort to medication and suicide. How could she possibly need to offer her heart's blood from childhood to now? You all need to control everything about me. I can't make a single mistake. Why can't I even decide whom I love and whom I marry? It cannot be decided by me. Father paused for a moment. His gaze became dim. Mother's voice broke the silence with a hint of a sorrowful smile. Oliver, you really dare to say you have no feelings for Emily at all? If you had no feelings for her, how could you possibly risk your life to save her? And not just once. Oliver opened his mouth, but he couldn't say a word. He loved her deeply, even willing to sacrifice his life for it. However, the constant pressure from his parents only sparked his rebellious spirit. He decided to take control of his own destiny, so he didn't realize how much he loved Emily. His mother's eyes turned red. Her voice trembled slightly. Emily came specifically to say goodbye to us yesterday. This child is really foolish. She has suffered so much. She was still thinking about you before leaving. All she hoped was that you could live well, a lifetime of peace and smooth sailing. Oliver suddenly remembered what Emily said in her farewell yesterday. His expression stiffened all at once. He was stunned for a while before speaking. But if she really came to say goodbye, why would she bring up the engagement? There was sadness in his mother's eyes. Her tone carried a sense of helplessness. Take a close look. What exactly is written on that engagement agreement? Oliver was momentarily stunned. He took the agreement out of his pocket. His mother's voice broke the silence. He said with a hint of a bitter smile, Oliver, do you really dare to say that you have no feelings for Emily at all? I looked down at the agreement. The elegant handwriting was clearly visible, but the signature was not Emily's. It was the glaring Sophia's. Oliver suddenly remembered yesterday. Emily said with a wry smile she wanted to fulfill him and Sophia. His mother patted his shoulder. She asked, Oliver, you really think Sophia committed suicide by taking sleeping pills? She had an improper relationship with a company executive. She was caught in the act by the executive's wife. To find a support, she went to great lengths to get close to you. The wife thought you and Emily were getting engaged. She probably wouldn't pay her any attention again. To vent her anger, she drugged her, from start to finish. Emily had nothing to do with this. A surge of indescribable sadness welled up in Oliver's heart. The company executive's wife and Sophia were soon brought over. As soon as the wife saw Oliver's presence, she was immediately terrified and lost her composure. Thinking about how he risked everything to save Sophia yesterday, even going so far as to draw blood from his fiancée, she was even more frightened. She directly fell to her knees and confessed everything in detail. "Mr. Oliver, it's all my fault. I was too blind to see. I didn't realize that Miss Sophia was someone you cared about. I even forced her to take those pills. Miss Sophia seduced my husband first. I couldn't bear it. That's why I did such a thing. I beg Mr. Oliver to spare me." Oliver's face turned pale. It felt like something inside him had collapsed. He stared intently at Sophia. His voice was hoarse, as if it had been rubbed with sandpaper. "What did you say to me before you fainted yesterday? She weakly cried to him. She cried weakly as she said to him, "Mr. Oliver, you have been so kind to me. I remember everything. But you are even nicer to me. Miss Emily won't let me off the hook. You didn't accompany her home. Her parents will come to trouble me. I understand I'm not qualified to stand by your side. I have already taken the medicine. I don't have the courage to continue living. It's a pity." He actually believed Sophia's words completely. Oliver has always been calm and restrained. He rarely gets angry, but this time his expression turned completely grim. His gaze was cold. "I really shouldn't have believed you. Emily's blood shouldn't be used to save someone like you. Someone take her to the police station. It will be quick." A group of bodyguards surrounded her. They have restrained Sophia. Sophia tried to struggle a few times, realizing there was no hope. She simply let out a cold laugh. "Mr. Oliver, you have been too strictly controlled by your family. There's a strong urge inside me to prove myself. This is how I fell for it. You never truly believed in Emily. You always felt she was in cahoots with her parents. You even doubt your own sincerity towards her. This is absolutely absurd." Sophia was taken away. Her laughter was like a sharp knife. It pierced deeply into Oliver's heart, causing him pain so intense he could hardly breathe. It was him. He hurt Emily with the most hurtful words. It was also him, coldly wanting to take her heart's blood. Overwhelming sorrow engulfed him in an instant. After leaving this city, I did not go to Tibet. I decided to visit the places my parents went to when they were young, after some twists and turns. I arrived in Haicheng. Although it's not as prosperous as that city, the local customs are very simple and honest. The boatman asked me with a smile, "Haicheng is so remote. How could a girl like you come here?" I didn't say anything. My parents met and got to know each other here. I also want to settle down in the place where my parents once lived and loved. I have established a school here. I also built a welfare home to adopt those homeless children. They won't have to suffer like I did when I was young, being bullied. They have the opportunity to become stronger here. Time flies by quickly. In the blink of an eye, it started pouring rain. I finished a day of classes at school. I was thinking about how to get home in the heavy rain. Just as I stepped out of the school gate, a sudden umbrella appeared over my head. The familiar scent of wood wafted into my nose. "It seems like I haven't smelled it in a long time," he said. "You haven't changed at all. You still forget to bring an umbrella. You always wait for me to pick you up at school every time it rains. Your health isn't very good. You should take better care of yourself." A familiar voice rang in my ears. I looked up. I stared blankly at Oliver in front of me. In an instant, I thought I was dreaming. Oliver has changed. His eyes are no longer as bright as before. He's also lost quite a bit of weight. His voice was caught in his throat. It sounded particularly hoarse. I could hardly hear his original tone. "Emily, I finally found you. I thought I would never see Oliver again in this lifetime. You came to find me. Is it because Uncle and Aunt miss me?" I clenched my hands tightly. I tried to calm the turmoil in my heart. How could Oliver possibly come looking for me? He stared at me intently. His eyes were red. That gaze seemed like it wanted to devour me. "It also seems like you are worried that I will disappear soon." He is like he was when he was a child. Gently stroked my head. "It's me. I want to see you." I widened my eyes in surprise. My mind went blank. "You came to find me. What about Sophia?" Oliver suddenly felt a tightness in his heart, felt a deep sense of heartache. He never let the girl he liked know his feelings. I've never had those feelings for Sophia. "Emily, you made it clear in that document. I must marry Sophia to inherit the fortune. I had to give up the 100 billion inheritance. As a result, I got hit by a car when I went out. I lay in bed for a whole month. Only then could I barely get out of bed. I could just stand steady. I immediately rushed to find you. The day you left, I received the bad news that you encountered robbers and unfortunately lost your life. At that moment, I nearly broke down. My emotions had never been so out of control. I watched you lying motionless on the road. It hurt me deeply inside. I even wanted to leave with you. In that moment, I realized how important you are to me. Actually, I had already fallen in love with you, but I never dared to admit it. What happened that day was completely a misunderstanding. I have figured everything out. Sophia has already been sent to prison by me. I have sought justice for the grievances you suffered. Come back with me. Let's get married. Okay, his voice trembled, with a hint of pleading. He gently reached out his hand, wanting to hold me. I was taken aback for a moment, but I still avoided it. Oliver's words shook my heart. I had never thought he would personally tell me that I hold such an important place in his heart. But I no longer dared to take the risk. In the last life, I spent my entire life on this, but I still couldn't make Oliver love me. In this lifetime, how could things go as I wish? I gently pressed my lips together and revealed a bitter smile. Oliver, my brother, I don't want to marry you anymore. You have protected me since childhood, even saving me at all costs. I mistakenly thought that was love. That's why I couldn't help but like you, always clinging to you. But I never asked if you truly wanted it. These are all my mistakes. You might still not understand your own feelings. You are so good to me. Maybe it's just because you feel indebted to me. Or perhaps it's because my parents like me. They think I'm suitable to be your wife. But to be honest, I don't care about your sense of guilt, I said to Oliver. Oliver, my brother, don't come looking for me anymore. After saying that, I pushed away the umbrella he was holding. I ran off into the rain. I was worried that if I waited one more second, I wouldn't be able to help but rush towards Oliver and cry like a fool. But in this life, I can't be that selfish anymore. Since then, Oliver stopped appearing as often. Some little objects that remind me of the past often appear at my doorstep. He seems to be slowly restoring the old me. Sometimes it's the few snacks I loved most when I was at the Marquis's residence. Other times, it's the little toys I used to ask him to make when I was a child. I never thought that Oliver would remember these little things so clearly. That day, I sent the students to take their college entrance examination. When we arrived at the dock outside the city, suddenly it became very noisy around us. A group of masked people appeared out of nowhere. They were all holding something in their hands. Scared, the bystanders ran away. I had heard long ago that this small town wasn't very safe. But at this critical moment, I became surprisingly calm. I desperately pushed the students into the car until the car slowly drove away. Only then did I start to evade the chaos. Suddenly, I saw a shiny knife coming at me. At that moment, I felt there was nothing left to worry about in this life. At least, I was just like my parents. I had also worked hard on this land. Just as the knife was about to stab my chest, someone suddenly grabbed the blade tightly with their hand. The familiar figure stood in front of me without hesitation. It was Oliver. His trembling hand tightly held the blade. Blood immediately stained his handsome face. He raised his hand to cover my eyes. Before long, he lifted me onto the motorcycle. With a twist of the throttle, the motorcycle sped out quickly. I screamed loudly in fear from behind. We reached a safe place. I'm still haunted by it. Oliver took a deep breath and slowly let it out, then leaned on my shoulder. He looked particularly exhausted, as if he had used up all his strength. He said in a low voice, "We need to call the police. We must call the police. Emily, I almost lost you again. I really can't imagine." He paused for a moment and said with a trembling voice, "I'm really scared. He has challenged the steepest peaks and nearly lost his life in the bitter cold, but he has never been this scared before. Now, even saying I'm scared feels so pale and powerless. My tears keep flowing uncontrollably. I can no longer see anything in front of me. I'm crying uncontrollably. Why did you do this to save me? Is it really worth it?" I took Oliver to a nearby clinic because he was losing too much blood from his hand. He also had a high fever. He was lying on the hospital bed. His face was as pale as paper. His body was shaking constantly. He kept calling my name. I was busy cooling down Emily and giving her medicine. I worked hard for quite a while. Finally, his complexion slowly improved. The situation also started to get better. I looked at his injured hand. My tears kept flowing down. Suddenly, a pair of warm hands gently touched my face. "Fool, you're still asking if it's worth it. Do you remember you asked me something before you left? Now I want to answer you again. Emily, I took the hit for you. I have no regrets at all. I don't care about anyone else, but for you, it's worth the effort. Without you, it's worse than death." At that moment, all my grievances and pain disappeared. I finally understood. Oliver doesn't not love me. He just has a habit of keeping that love hidden in his heart. My hands trembled violently. Tears kept flowing down. Later, Oliver and I returned to the city. We got married. Time flew by in the blink of an eye. Oliver is already 30 years old. He tightly held my hand with a firm tone. Emily, meeting you in this lifetime is truly wonderful.